Good morning, friends. Today I want to talk about conductors because I've worked with many conductors over my years as an orchestral musician. And, we got some questions we can ask like, what's special about conductors? Why do we need them? Do we need a conductor to beat time for us so we can play together? And I think it's easy to say no, they're not just beating time. I remember when I was in Aspen at the music festival there for a couple of years, that very fine violinist named of Mary Lou Speaker, who was a member of the Boston Symphony for a very long time, very excellent player. She was the concertmaster of the Aspen Chamber Orchestra. And she was often asked to conduct the music. The chamber orchestra, any chamber orchestra, smaller group will play music, a lot of music by Mozart, Haydn, often 20th century. Smaller, just with smaller numbers of musicians on stage. And Mary Lou was extremely proficient in using her violin to lead the orchestra. I actually myself also conducted the San Francisco Symphony in Beethoven's Fifth, if you can imagine. That's not an easy thing to do. Luckily, I have a master's degree in music, and during the time that I studied doing that, I also took conductor classes. So I learned that Beethoven's Fifth is a classic example of something fairly difficult to conduct. And it's easy if you're like here, you have an upbeat measure, ba 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 ba, ba 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 bee, ba 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 ba, basically like that, of course, with a lot of energy because you're leading 100 people. However, I was asked to do it as the concertmaster because I was acting concertmaster for the youth concerts that we were playing. So I had to, take my violin, and it was very uncomfortable, da 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 dee, da 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 dee, da da da. But at least I had a concept of how to do it. So the actual beating time is not a super big deal. I've also heard of conductorless orchestras, like, for example, there was a famous early 20th century Russian conductorless orchestra, and I've just read about it, and it was actually apparently a political statement in those times against authoritarian rule. So, and I don't know how long it lasted, but somebody's got to make some decisions, and we'll discuss that, So we don't need conductors to beat time. And conductors have many roles as what's usually called, the title is conductor and music director. And making music is only one aspect of what a conductor does. The conductors have very important administrative roles. They create repertoire programming, sometimes years ahead of the performances. They can be involved with planning business strategies for raising funds for touring, maybe yearly orchestra expenses, applying for grants. They also attend auditions to hire new personnel. They're also vitally important in creating interface with the local community, including fundraising, making speeches, promoting participation of young people through young people's concerts, like you might know of Leonard Bernstein's famous New York Philharmonic concerts. When I was growing up, he was doing those, and they're still available on YouTube. And so aside from all these other duties that conductors have, that they're also a vital part of the orchestra. They infuse their energy, their power, their spirit into every piece of music performed. I want to focus my talk on about conductors on three particular conductors who were so very important in my career. The first is my dear friend Michael Neumann, and two others are Josef Krips and Kurt Masur. So I met Mike Newman when we were both young music students in San Francisco. We were playing in an orchestra, what they call the All-City Orchestra, All-City Honor Orchestra. And we sat on a stand together for a couple of years. And, you know, Mike was a super, super handsome young guy. He had just immigrated from South Africa with his family, had a wonderful accent, and he was a wonderful, talented musician also. And since I was the concert master, sometimes the leader would ask me to conduct the orchestra so he could go out and listen. And I wasn't comfortable with it. I was very shy and immature. I liked playing the violin, but being demonstrative in front of a group wasn't my thing. But I had talked with Mike many times about it, and he was really excited about conducting. So I asked the leader, let Mike do it. He'll be good. He'll be good. I didn't know. So finally, the leader said, "Okay, Mike, come on, conduct." And Michael was fantastic. Not only just, leading the orchestra, doing the conducting, but he was expressing himself through the music. I was just so impressed. I'll never forget it. When he was conducting, he seemed like a professional. And, I knew he was going to have a great, great future as a conductor someday. He used to always say to me, "Oh, you're going to have a great solo career." Well, at least I had a career. I did get a good job in San Francisco Symphony, but when we're kids, we dream. So Mike did go ahead and conduct many professional orchestras, and then finally he ended up settling down in Sacramento. And he accepted the role as conductor and music director of the Sacramento Symphony Youth Orchestra. And he held that position for over 40 years. And he helped this group, we've talked about it, he said he helped build this group from just a small student group to a very, very large group with several orchestras. And it became a very, very significant fixture in the community there for youth participation and the development for students, because it isn't just about music for kids. It's just helping them develop themselves, well-rounded individuals, and to become participating in the local community for the betterment of all. Mike also took the group on many national and international tours, so they became very, very well known from that standpoint. It was wonderful. He's retired now from conducting, but we speak often on the phone, and he tells me he still loves playing violin, and he loves teaching. He has many students there still, and he has many other things that he does, various martial arts and other forms of exercise. He also took some time to write his memoirs, and for any of you who might be interested in very, very compelling writing, I've got the book. It's very wonderful. It's available on Amazon. He calls it From Toddler to Maestro. And so if you want, it's not very expensive, and you could go ahead and purchase that. So that was my experience with Mike Newman. It was, I was very young at that time, but it made a really powerful impact on how he was able to get up there and conduct and express himself and really make something special. He was actually better than the guy who was doing the leading. The leaders of the youth orchestras were usually teachers in the San Francisco School District who taught music. But Michael was great. So the next conductor I want to speak of is Josef Krips. Josef Krips was the conductor of the San Francisco Symphony during my teenage years. I had opportunity to interact with him when he occasionally came to conduct the honor orchestra with me as the concertmaster, so he got to know me. He's an older man, an Austrian who lived in Vienna when he wasn't in San Francisco. One of his claims to fame was helping rebuild the music scene in Vienna after World War II. When he accepted the conductor role in San Francisco, he brought with him a strong European classical tradition. So there was lots of music of Mozart, Beethoven, Bruckner, Mahler, Tchaikovsky, always being presented by the symphony, by the San Francisco Symphony. And, it's music that I loved. Whenever I played in the orchestra with him conducting, I felt his energy and drive. He had great passion for music. He would shout and gesticulate, do anything to get more energy from the orchestra. He made me feel that every note I played was vitally important. So, as the years went by, there came an opportunity to play with San Francisco. There was a substitute needed, and there was an audition, and I auditioned, and he hired me for that first year. And I'll never forget the first concert I ever played with San Francisco Symphony in the Opera House. It was so intimidating just to be in the Opera House where all my heroes had worked. I had gone to see them. There I was backstage with them. And we played, that first concert was the Mazur dances by Kodai. Funny thing is, I never played the piece again, but I still remember the first notes, how they go. And then we played the Beethoven Piano Concerto No. 2 with Rudolf Verkusny as the soloist. Very, very beautiful, great player. And then we played Tchaikovsky's Pathetique Symphony. What a start for me. What an amazing piece. Since then I played the Pathetique many, many times, but I never felt the music more deeply in that first set that I did with Cripps. It was a magical time, and his interpretation was magical. He had a way of not taking tempos too fast or too slow. Everything just felt so perfect. And it seemed like every time he conducted a symphony, there would be a standing ovation. I've played the symphony with many other conductors where, the audience, when it's over, the audience is kind of sitting on their hands. It just didn't touch them. I remember playing Beethoven symphonies with Cripps, and always amazing ovations at the end where other conductors would conduct the same, some works in a different year or whatever, and the audience is kind of not moved, because Cripps had this magical way of just communicating not only to the orchestra to inspire us, but also to the audiences. He was real old school type of guy, tough. I heard from a reliable source, my teacher told me that before concerts he would have cortisone injections because his shoulders and arms hurt so bad from conducting. But he also had a great sense of humor. The first time I played A Night in Old Vienna, which is the New Year's Eve concert that the symphony, many orchestras have that, and they play music like from Vienna. And this first time, Cripps was the conductor, and we were playing lots of Strauss waltzes and things, and there's a traditional rhythm that the accompaniment goes ba, 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 ba. With the second beat of the measure, it's in 3. The second beat goes just a little early, ba, ba. Well, I didn't know that. Maybe I'd heard it, but I wasn't aware. Nobody told me. So I'm kind of stumbling a little bit as the rest of the second violins are all playing this thing perfectly. And Cripps immediately stops the orchestra, points the finger at me, and he says, "He's very young." But thank God he was laughing, and I was so embarrassed, and I got red in the face, and that made everybody else in the orchestra laugh more. But I'll tell you, sink or swim, I got with the program in a hurry. I was on top, I was there. Oh. I have lots of other remembrances of Cripps over the years from working with him. He was only the music director for that first year, but he came back to conduct the orchestra for many weeks every year for several years. And I also ran into him when the orchestra toured in Europe. So, you know, my connection to Cripps went on for quite a while, and it was very, very memorable and really changed the way I looked at music and my understanding of music, to have that European influence, which I had never had before. And speaking of European influence, the last conductor I want to speak of is Kurt Masur. So Kurt Masur, I feel, was the greatest conductor of my lifetime. He's gone now. He died in 2015. But he epitomized every great aspect of what a conductor should be in front of an orchestra. He was a big man, standing on the podium. He was a big man already, and then we give him another foot or foot and a half, however tall the podium is. He's very commanding. His knowledge of the scores was superb. His interpretations, well conceived, very satisfying for everyone. His energy seemed limitless with the power of the music behind him. He was demanding, refusing to settle for anything less than our best. He made playing in an orchestra so exciting for me, and I'd been there a long time, that had he accepted to be the conductor of the symphony, I wouldn't have left. But he didn't. He decided to go and conduct the New York Philharmonic. He still came back for guest conductor weeks, but you know, he wasn't going to be the conductor there, so I decided I would move on. I guess he was what you'd call a superstar conductor, always drawing standing room only crowds for every concert and making every piece of music significant, going far beyond what other conductors could do. For example, I remember we played this piece, the Pictures at an Exhibition by Mussorgsky, which had at that point, fairly traditional transcription done by Maurice Ravel. And it was very beautiful, but it had been done many times. Well, with Mazur, he asked that he could do the Rimsky-Korsakov version. And we had a rehearsal on the piece before Mazur arrived in San Francisco. We used to have a Saturday rehearsal, and then then our next rehearsal would be on a Tuesday. And so the assistant conductor took that rehearsal, and he said, "Well, let's just look through this piece, and you know, I don't really know it very well, and we'll see how it goes." And so we just sort of played it through. And it was some hilarious sounding stuff with saxophones and just weird sounds. And we had a lot of laughs. And when Mazur came in on Tuesday, the first thing he says, "Now listen, I know a lot of you are going to have very poor opinions about the way this has been orchestrated, but let me tell you, this is the most fantastic orchestration. You will love it. By the time we perform it tomorrow, you will love it." And he was right. He took it so seriously, no one in the orchestra, a lot of us crusty musicians, we took it serious, and it was a great performance. I do have one funny anecdote to share. One week we were playing with Mazur the Dvorak New World Symphony, and we had our rehearsals, and they went well, and we played 4 concerts and every week. And on the Wednesday night, the first concert, we got to the last movement, and there were these chords, dun 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 dun, dun with a crunch from the string section, and we could tell Mazur wasn't happy. He was conducting, but he was kind of starting to frown. And you know, when Mazur starts looking angry, we're all getting a little nervous, and we started to hear some grumbling. Just during the concert, he's grumbling. So it's okay. We get through that concert. The next night, we're playing over in Berkeley at the hall there. We used to do runouts at Zellerbach Hall. And we start, in that last moment, we're hearing more grumbling. And then all of a sudden, during the concert, he screamed, "Staccatissimo!" at the top of his lungs. I mean, my stand partner was Virginia Baker, very, very fine violinist, and the assistant concertmaster of the orchestra, and I kind of glanced over at her. She had like terror on her face. So we were ripping those chords with all the energies we could, and so then we come to the third concert. We're all, Friday night, we're back in San Francisco, and we're all just sitting on the edges of our chair. Well, what's he going to do this time? And he was looking around at us, and he didn't say anything the third night. So I guess from that point forward, we were warned and ready to go. Well, it had to be maybe a year later. I remember we were down in Cupertino. We did. I forget if we were doing recording. We used to record down there, but we also had runouts. So it was a daylight, so maybe we were recording. Anyhow, Mazur was there conducting, and I had a chance to just go up and talk to him. And I asked him, I said, Maestro, do you remember last year when we played the New World Symphony and you yelled staccati? He says, oh yeah. I said, well, what happened? He says, I don't know. He was very good humor about the whole thing. I don't know. It was just some gut feeling, I just needed more energy from the strings. And it just, those things sometimes happen. It's just spontaneous. So that was an amazing experience. I'd say that, conductors, great conductors, they're certainly not time beaters. They are larger than life in front of an orchestra. They can take a group of musicians to heights unreachable, unthinkable without their energies. And not a lot of conductors have that kind of energy. And I've worked with many, many conductors over the years. Seiji Ozawa hired me actually as a permanent member, and he was a fine conductor. And I remember in Aspen, I worked with James Levine. James Levine had an amazing energy. I remember doing the Rite of Spring with, and that's not as high a level professional group. And Levine got a tremendous performance. So there are many, many fine conductors, but then these few, like Cripps, like Mazur, that can just make amazing music and not only lift the orchestra, but lift the audiences also. So thank you so much for listening to my ramblings about conductors, and I hope to see you on the next video. So have a wonderful afternoon.